camera should come on in a second.
I'll read through whatever.
There we are. All right, everybody, good evening. We're going to call to order the meeting of the Nashoba Regional School Committee. We will begin with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if you could all rise. And I'll lead. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So on our agenda here, our first matter is public comment. We don't have any public comments, so we're going to roll right along. And we're going to move to the consent agenda. Turn to my trusty vice chair.
I will move to approve the consent agenda for November 9th, 2022, containing the meeting minutes of October 26th, 2022, and the warrants of November 11th, 2022.
And second.
Second.
Thanks, Sharon. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? Okay. Jane?
Yep.
Okay. Any opposed? All right, so that passes. For the school committee chairperson update, there is nothing notable to share at this point, so we'll keep moving. And we are going to head right over to Kirk's superintendent report.
We're just getting right to it today, aren't we?
Surely are.
Okay, I'll try to go along with the theme of the evening thus far. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, committee. It's great to see everybody tonight. Some things to go through tonight and some pieces I want to bring up to you. Ms. Kathy Cummings from Assabet Valley Collaborative. As you know, I gave you an update last month on ABC and our relationship with them. Well, at the board meeting, she provided us a much more comprehensive update to ABC than I provided for you. So that's what included in your packet tonight. So I won't repeat that my comments from last time, other than just to say the digital copies that you have of the ABC update provides the links to all the pertinent resources, the requirements at DESE, those types of things for our collaborative. So that's just additional information on a relationship with ABC from last month. The next piece I'd like to get to is around out-of-district increases for FY24. So we received notice from the Operational Services Division of the Commonwealth that next year they have approved up to an increase in 14% for out-of-district special education services for programming. And so I included several things in your packet for this month around those services. And these are products that were collected by superintendents and our organization, Massachusetts Association of School Superintendents. An FAQ document is included in there, as well as, I believe, a sample letter to the letter campaign of as we're reaching out to our various representatives. So Senator James Elridge, who represents Stowe, Senator John Cronin, who represents Lancaster and Bolton, Representative Kate Hogan, who represents Stowe and Bolton, and Representative Megan Kilcoyne, who represents Lancaster. So this model letter was sent to each one of them. Because what we don't know right now is what the Commonwealth's plan for balancing this 14% increase in costs are with school funding. And even if they do balance it with circuit breaker funds, it's important to note that circuit breaker funds are always out a year from the time of the service because they're reimbursement dollars. So these are reimbursement dollars with the increase in costs of these funds that would not actualize for us until FY25. Now, historically, circuit breaker doesn't fund at 100% of what the cost of funding is. And so we typically use a methodology of budgeting around 70% for special education offsets as we project what that number is in the budget process. We don't know, and then I think last year it came in at 75%, if I recall. So we don't know what the circuit breaker formula is going to look like this year. But what I will say to the committee is I know MASC is also advocating for some solutions for DESE. We recognize all of our educational partners have a need to service children across Massachusetts. That's not our game or argument. It is, and allowing these significant increases, there is a ripple effect that happens in budgeting for our school system. And that ripple effect also in terms of personnel runs the risk of, as significant increases, you saw references to $10,000 bonuses offered to people that sign up in these private settings, throws a competition piece into the workforce that has the potential of impacting us in a way where employees could potentially leave the system to take a lucrative signing bonus or whatever that increase in salary might be for an individual, and as a result leave us, thus leaving us without educators at a time where finding these educators for our students with the most severe of needs has never been more difficult. Creating a cycle then where then we would have to place students in these outplacement programs for which we just lost staff because of this significant change in salary. So as you can see, there's a 10-year historical, or actually it goes back 13 years to FY11 of what typical annual increases are. So you can see last year, I believe, was the highest in a decade, and that was at 2.54%. This was 14% increase. It's significant. So I am alerting you, I'm alerting our town partners so that we're all aware as we enter into this budget season, we have what was an unexpected cost driver placed upon us that we're going to have to find some solutions to. So Mr. Mulcairn, Ms. DeAngelis, and our staff, we're working hard to plan for options that are going to be out there in the spring, but we don't have certainty on that yet because, you know, we're not even into budget season yet. I want to pause at this moment and defer to my colleague, Mr. Mulcairn, to see if he had any color to add to that update.
So not significantly to what the Superintendent Downing said, I think from a strict budgetary standpoint, it's how do we budget the cost appropriately and accurately, and then also what is the consideration of what happens to circuit breaker, as far as what we can do is projecting revenues from that. So part of the concern is that because the costs would go up across the Commonwealth, we would run into a situation of what does that make the pool of circuit breaker available to all districts look like, and then how does that trickle down to FY25 reimbursement on circuit breaker. So there's a lot of layers, but there's still more information to come. I was at MASBO 2 weeks ago and this came up. There wasn't a lot of more significant information other than what Superintendent Downing shared and what's in the meeting materials tonight, but those are the wrinkles that we're trying to work out, and I feel lucky that Joan DeAngelis has such a good knowledge base of her own budget and can make good predictions and work with me and Superintendent Downing as we plan for this going into FY24.
So to anticipate the question of really what does that look like in terms of cost to us, we all know that in terms of out-of-district services, cost for out-of-district services is a variable in the budget year over year that it varies greatly. And that mostly has to do with move-ins, students that age out or move out of the system that need services that require funding. That being said, if we look exactly the way we do today, the impact to the budget would be in the range of $271,000 to $291,000 if it were identical today. So as you can recognize, that's significant. When we're talking about how do we reach, a budget that our communities and our towns can digest and deliver the services we need. So there's no solutions, there's no presentation tonight. I am just putting the committee on notice that this is going to be a challenge for us, and we're hard at work right now looking for pathways to solve that challenge. Typically, I think I would forge on in the report, but I think it's pertinent to pause here. and perhaps solicit questions, but I leave that to the chair.
I think that's a great idea. So, for starters, does anybody have any clarifying questions? Anything that you just didn't understand? Any language? Any acronyms? Ask the question that you think might be like the most obvious thing. You guys can ask questions too.
So I have a question. So the Operational Services Division has made this decision, but what is their authority? Like, I'm confused about where their authority is over DESE.
They're a regulatory agency within the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that authorizes private schools to offer services under the guidance of their, what they will allow for reimbursable funds. So in that way, they set the price rate, essentially, for many of those services.
And is there any, does anybody have any understanding of why they have decided to jump? Where they've been fairly consistent with their increases over the years, and then now all of a sudden it's an enormous.
Ms. Pock, you're asking a question that I put out there myself, as well as my superintendent colleagues have. They would cite some of the answers that I think we would see are obvious answers. Cost of inflation, the ability to attract educators to these settings, because our privates, as I reported at ABC, we're having a heck of a time, even in collaborative settings, finding folks. Private settings are just as difficult, if not more. So all those market conditions that we find challenges, this is a solution that's been put out there to mitigate that. The part that I'm asking questions about, that I want to know more about, is what is the plan to fill the gap of cost? Because as we hear stories of leftover, I think excess government funds from the pandemic and receipts coming in at higher than anticipated levels over the past year, are there dollars out there that are going to mitigate the increase in the funding and the increase in these town budgets? These are the questions we're trying to get some answers to, and we're asking our legislators to dig into this so that we can make sure we're not, in an effort to do something that is going to change the trajectory and temperature for one sector, is impacting this other sector in a negative way. Like, is there a plan to mitigate those holes? And that's what we're pursuing right now. So I wish I had a more direct and complete answer for you, but the truth is I don't have the complete rationale for that.
Can I add on to that and just say that it seems to me that 5.18% is for the COLA, and so whereas they've been going up by 2.7, 2.2, 2.5, it seems like if they had just kept the trajectory, they would have gone up by 5.18 in '24. But they've added this workforce stability factor that is 8.82%. And that's the piece that tells me, it says that it's for recruitment, hiring, and retention of qualified staff. And so that's the new part. And I think that what's problematic is that that is actually, we are paying them to recruit our staff away from our schools. And so you are predicting, what was the number?
270 to 290,000?
Yep.
If our outplacements stay identical, which
Correct.
they likely won't,
Likely won't.
we could actually have far more heading out because we don't have the staff to support. So that number could double, it could triple. I mean, who knows where it could go.
That's right.
If we can't service the kids here, we have to send them somewhere else to a private entity that is getting paid even more to take more public school staff. So this feels like a complete boondoggle to me.
I'm glad to hear you say that, because I think this is where we can reach out to the leaders of our organizations to find out what we can do as a committee to again lobby our legislators in a way that is going so they can understand the scope of this problem. I will say, as part of out-of-district services, there's an emergency relief provision, so that year over year, if let's say you have some move-ins you didn't anticipate, and the cost to educate those students, and Ross, you're going to stop me in my tracks when I get too far, I hope, is that if 125% above what you budgeted for the previous year, you can apply for emergency relief with the state of Massachusetts to pay for the cost over that. So as we look at that, we're looking at our move-ins that we've had this year, studying that this closely. Ms. DeAngelis is hard at work at this. We'll be putting some detail to this ultimately when we get to the budget workshop, so the committee can see in the numbers the impact of that increase.
Amy? Oh, I thought I read something about, is there not a provision where it can only go up, you know what I mean, like there's a cap to keep it reasonable, just like in towns, right? If we go over a certain amount, there it triggers like an override vote or whatever. Is there not like a thing that is there to keep it reasonable so that you don't have these enormous jumps?
No, because these are charges for private schools. So they're setting the rates for these private schools, and the way they're able to do that is because it sets the reimbursement rates for school systems. So no, there is no type of structure purview of that being in the private sector.
Any other clarifying questions? I mean, this is early stage. This is kind of a fair warning.
Could you just clarify what circuit breaker funds, like their impact on this? Or I'm not familiar with that term, so if you could clarify that for me, that would be helpful.
Mr. McCarron, you want to take a shot at this one?
I'm happy to.
Yeah.
So we get a certain reimbursement based on special education costs that qualify. So annually, Joan DeAngelis will prepare a budget and then also make a submission for reimbursement on what's called circuit breaker. And what would happen is we would get our reimbursement. So we just received our reimbursement information for what we're getting this year as a revenue to offset this year's budget. But when we planned this year's budget, we used last year's tuitions to calculate what that money would be coming in this year as a revenue to offset this year's budget. The difficulty in this situation is because our reimbursement is a year behind. When we plan next year's budget, we're going to be potentially planning for an increase of $270,000 to $290,000, but our circuit breaker reimbursement will be based on this year. That does not include that increase. So not only does the potential cost go up by a significant amount, our circuit breaker coming in, with all things being the same, without a change to that, will stay the same.
Okay.
So there becomes a bigger gap of placement on the district budget and therefore the assessment for where we're going to be at with that. The other pieces, and the concern is, and you can look on the FAQ that's been provided by MASS, is that I think it's over $90 million of the total of what they're anticipating that this will look like for districts across the Commonwealth. So the bigger question, I think, the advocacy layer is, what then becomes of circuit breaker? Are there enough reserves available in the state fund to supply circuit breaker to support districts when they plan their FY25 budgets to support the increase and what the impact is?
Thank you. I'll add on to that to say, even hypothetically, if circuit breaker were funded at a much higher rate today and we're able to mitigate that cost, what we've essentially done is taken that 14% and reallocated those dollars to the private sector.
Yeah.
And so, as we've advocated for circuit breaker to be reimbursed at 100% for years, even if that move were to be made now, it wouldn't be a move that would benefit the public setting, it would benefit the private setting. And as you know, we highly value having a specialized program within our district. While there's a financial benefit to doing that, the social and emotional benefits to allowing students who live in our communities to attend school in our communities and receive this specialized instruction is critically important. So there's layers of complexity to this that we're going to have to watch closely as we come along. So we'll be, as we learn more, we'll be coming back to the committee to update on any new information that comes along.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a related question, I guess? And I guess it's for you, Ross. Or maybe it's for Joe. The Medicaid reimbursement for districts, is that something that Nashoba, I know different districts are like, some are really on top of it and some it's like evolving, right? And getting better every year. But there's a lot of money out there to be reimbursed for districts. Is that something that we're already pretty on top of, or is sort of coming along for Nashoba, just because it doesn't solve the problem of what's coming and staffing and all of that, but it is a good source of reimbursement for the district?
I don't know specifically as far as sort of the health of our reimbursement program through Medicaid. I think Joan would be a much better educator on that. But knowing how detailed things are in that office, I would find it hard pressed to believe that there's much more of a revenue stream available through that to offset this. But certainly worth double checking and asking the questions on to make sure that we're covering all of our bases.
And those reimbursements are important when it comes to the health reimbursements due to students' health conditions, right? So yes, we do participate that. It is part of the revenue that we build into the budget each year, and it varies according to whatever medical services that child's being provided. We have some intensive cases in our system, so it is a significant source of reimbursement for us. But in terms of providing any type of relief or anything, it's just they're completely parallel. Yeah.
One last question is, what are the, maybe you can't answer this, but what are the chances that this is going to make it into the budget as it's been proposed? Because this isn't final yet, is it?
Oh no, this is. This has been advised that these rates have been advised. So yes, these are the numbers we will have to work with in the budget this year.
Because this bureau has authorized them to increase their prices by 14%, so why wouldn't they, these private schools? So they're going to charge us more.
Correct.
There are limited numbers of them. They're few and far between, right? And so it's not like we can shop around and try to get them to compete. They're all gonna put their prices higher. So.
Okay, I just wasn't clear if whether there were efforts on behalf of our legislators to try to get this appealed, or...
That's why we're writing the letters.
Yeah.
That's why
So that is a possibility.
To appeal the percentage or to appeal for more money?
The real...
We're looking for help. We're looking from help from Beacon Hill in terms of how to solve this problem.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Okay.
So I think maybe the best information we could have is what can we do?
So I think what we can do, Madam Chair, if I may be so bold, is to reach out to the president of your organization and say, on behalf of school committees, how is MASC campaigning to help supporting the budgets due to this 14% increase? And MASC, I think, can guide you on that. So Dorothy would be a good contact for that.
So perhaps I'll do that in the intervening time here, and at our next meeting, I can provide you with any updates on how not only school committees can help, but is there a way that community members can help?
In our packets, you'll see the sample letter that has been sent out to our representatives. So for any of our community members that are looking to help out with this, you can certainly write to your legislators and let them know that this is a concern, so that they can hear from us that we need some solutions to this. Again, the issue is not whether these private settings should have the resources they need to execute what are good and needed programs. The issue is the structure in which this is coming is having a ripple effect on how the constructions of budgets are being done all across the state, and putting school districts in places where they're going to have to make some really hard choices about programming. So we're going to work hard to prevent that, but we have to be prepared to.
Thanks for that update, and we'll keep going on.
Okay, yeah.
Into lighter topics.
Thank you, Madam Chair. If you would not mind recognizing Ms. Friend, she would like to give us an update on some work going on, strategic work going on in the Teaching and Learning Office.
Fantastic. Take it away, Assistant Superintendent.
Thank you, Superintendent Downing. So the first update we have relative to updates on our strategic work is related to a new online language translation and interpretation service that we have recently moved to as a district, and that is Lexikeet. And this is to support the language needs of our families who are requiring or who have requested translation services for language needs. And Lexikeet is providing us with 3 different types of services that are appropriate for our work: document translation, scheduled interpretation, which we most recently used this week for parent-teacher conferences, and on-demand translation. Services are provided through an online portal, and we have identified users within each of our schools to help us with the scheduling of translation needs. And so far, the service and the platform has been very user-friendly and responsive and timely, and the feedback has been strong. So I should mention that the prior service that we used was a local service, and it provided very strong support. And it also took some time for us to schedule interpretation services. And in sometimes we had to push back meetings with families because we weren't able to engage in those translation services in a timely way. So Lexikeet provides us with a more timely response for families and needs, very quick turnaround because the services are being provided virtually. And so far, the feedback has been very strong. I received an email from a teacher yesterday, and the subject of the email was, "We love Lexikeet." That was it. Just the subject. So we're monitoring the feedback relative to Lexikeet as it works to help provide us with really important communication services for families of our language learners. So we'll continue to keep you updated. So far, so good. That's our priority, right, is providing our families with the services that they require. And cost is always a factor, but in this case, it would be a secondary factor. But Lexikeet is a cost savings in that our prior service required a minimum amount because travel time was allocated with it. So with Lexikeet, we're paying for the service and the time that we're using. So if the conference or the meeting is 10 minutes, then we're providing for that service, where the prior service, there was a 2-hour minimum and it included travel. So we're hopeful about the service, and again, the feedback has been positive, and the feedback was positive so far with parent-teacher conferences this week.
Shall we pause there for questions, or do you want to continue teaching and learning and then questions?
It's up to you.
If we have any questions on Lexikeet, we can take them now. Chandra?
I'm just curious about privacy and confidentiality, since it sounds like they're dealing with sensitive stuff. I assume we have some kind of privacy agreement?
So it's HIPAA compliant, and we vetted the privacy documentation in the contract with our business office and with our human resource office as well. But yes, it's HIPAA compliant.
Great. Yeah, Maureen?
Does it still allow for families to meet in person with the teacher, but the interpreter is then virtual?
Right, that's the model that we've engaged in. We've also let our building principals and our families know, well, our building principals and our teachers know that if we have a situation where it's best for an interpreter to be in person, we're going to make that happen.
Oh, got it.
I have a question. Sure. With regard to the interpretation services, are parents permitted to bring their own interpreter in lieu of using Lexikeet? Okay, thank you.
All right, great. Let's keep going.
Okay. The second update is relative to two strategic objectives. There's a lot here, and several strategic initiatives. Three strategic objectives and several strategic initiatives. And this is work that is happening at the high school, and work in support of our strategic plan on many different levels. And so we know that through our district early release time, we are fully engaged in our curriculum development, alignment, and mapping work in grades 6 through 12 and K-8 for related arts. But we're knee deep in it at the high school. But we also have some additional work happening at the high school under Dr. Boynton's guidance and direction, and that is relative to the time being used during our late starts, of which there are 6. And so we thought it appropriate to give you a beginning update about this work at this juncture, knowing that we've only had 2 late starts so far this year and we have more to come. And we anticipate and would love to be able to provide the committee with an update of the outcomes of the work later in the year. So this is just an introduction. The focus areas for the professional learning time directly relate to the through lines of our strategic plan and include 4 different topics, if you will: innovative instruction, universal design for learning, social emotional learning, and diversity, equity, inclusion, and belonging. At the beginning of this school year, Dr. Boynton submitted a request for proposals from the high school staff, and the proposals included a robust description of the work as a proposal, the timeline, and the intended outcomes for the proposal. Proposals were vetted by Dr. Boynton and her leadership team, and what resulted were 12 professional learning time groups. And we've listed those for you here. They range in topic. They all relate to one of those 4 through lines of our strategic plan, range from some great work happening in our English and Social Studies department, interdisciplinary projects, project-based learning, lesson plans, and common practices between those departments, to work with our applied arts and business departments around an exploration of innovation pathways, specifically advanced manufacturing and information technology, and exploring the idea of creating these pathways for our students moving forward. And that work right now in terms of research and investigation and applicability of those opportunities for our students, which directly support our educational visioning with our plans for our hopeful new high school. That work is happening. We have a group working on world language, innovative instruction. We've talked to you about the state seal of biliteracy already and getting that off the ground, and all of that work is being supported additionally through the professional learning time at the high school. So we have a lot going on, and it's exciting work because it's complementing the work that's happening with curriculum mapping and alignment, and is really providing excitement and energy to see where we can be. And kudos to Dr. Boynton and her team and the teachers at the high school and the department chairs at the high school for leading the work and really digging in and leaning into some really great opportunities for our students.
I wonder if anybody has any questions?
That'll conclude our report.
Fantastic. Thank you, everybody. So moving on to our next topic, it would be our student representative report. And we are very happy to have both of you here, so welcome. Take it away.
Thank you. So we're planning a Powerpuff football game. So basically what it is, it's a flag football game where the girls can play and the boys football team coaches. So that should be fun. We're also planning a lip dub this year, so it's just a musical hype video for the high school, and typically it's released before the pep rally. Currently, we're working on song and lyric composition for it. And we had a successful homecoming this past Saturday, November 5th. We raised money and we're undecided what to do with it yet, but that's always a good thing just to have the money. And then there's an upcoming drama production. It's The Play That Goes Wrong. And then the dates for the shows are November 17th through 20th.
And I'm sure as you know, the varsity boys soccer season ended this Saturday. We played in Canton. That was our last game because we lost in the knockout stages. We had a good run of the season. We also have a field hockey game playing tonight. If they win, then round 8 is going to be at home on Sunday. We also had a unified basketball game. Loved the turnout. It was won by the unified team. And the home game on Thursday against Wachusett for football will be this Thursday. That's about it.
Thanks, guys. Any questions for our high school students? All right. So as always, you are welcome to stay, but we know you're busy, so feel free to exit at any point after this. So thanks, guys. Thank you. All right. So now we go to our new business, and we will pick it up with our new center school principal, Principal Dulsky, with her entry plan presentation.
That's great. Madam Chair, I would like to introduce to the committee Ms. Shelley Dulsky here in person.
Hello.
Shelley is our new, Ms. Dulsky is our new principal at Center School in Stowe. And I have to say, we've gotten off to a great start with a lot of positive energy and spirit. And the Fox mascot is being found all over the place every time I visit the school. So a lot of great energy. Welcome, Ms. Dulsky. We'd love to hear about your intentions for entry this year.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me here. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me tonight. And I just have to say thank you. I haven't been able to sit with all of you since I've stepped into Center School. And, Laura always talks about Nashoba being such a special place. And when I came to Massachusetts and made this huge life change and big decision, what I was secretly, selfishly hoping is that I would find a place where I belonged. Belonging is what I want for all of our students, and it's also what I want for myself and for all of us. And I thought I made a good choice, and then you cross your fingers and you start. And I know that I am in the right place. I know I get a little weepy. I have these colleagues behind me, couldn't have a better team. Couldn't be on a better ship. And so I'm just grateful to be here. I'm honored. I'm honored to be, getting to shepherd our littlest soon-to-be Nashoba graduates, seeing the high schoolers. It starts with us. It starts in preschool. And so all of the characteristics that we're developing as a district start with us. And that's just an amazing opportunity to have. And so I just grateful to be here. I could soapbox forever about it, but I'll get on to something a little bit more. One of the things that I was really excited about when I was interviewing and researching, honestly, I had reviewed Superintendent Downing's entry plan, and I am a detail person. I want to know where the road is. I want to know where I'm going. I want to make sure it's clear. And the entry plan was clear to me. It made sense to me. And then the strategic plan, obviously follows that, came from that work, and makes sense. And I was hoping to, as part of my goal also, to be in a place where I could affect change. I was in a very large district in Colorado. It reminds me of my time many moons ago when I worked on sports fishing boats in San Diego, and we'd be going out the harbor, and I was on big boats sometimes, and the captains of the boats would be constantly yelling and screaming about how they couldn't adjust very quickly, and they were always worried about running into someone on some kind of watercraft that was moving too fast, and we just couldn't adjust. And I longed to be on like the sleek sailboats that could just flip through get through the waves and get where you wanted to go. And so for me, this work here is really getting off that big ship and getting on the sailboat, because we are all aligned. We are, you'll see that, I'm sure you've already seen that the principals of all of the buildings are very aligned in the work on the strategic plan about what we can do and affect at the school level. And so it's really exciting to be part of this change that you can feel just really happening. So for my entry plan, I was very excited to be asked to do this, honestly. The framework that I took when I thought about this, because of course, it can be wildly broad, right? I want to know everything about everything, but I also want this to inform the work that we're doing. So the way I framed my entry plan was to look at the strategic plan, which informs our school improvement plan, and that's coming next. And how could I do my work around my professional practice goals to specifically support the work of the improvement plan and the work that we're doing at Center. And so my goals are to really dig deeply into the historical context and the current realities in the 4 buckets that we'll be addressing. So communication, access to information, access to learning, equitable opportunities, and then safety through the really workforce effectiveness goals. And so finding everything about that and then looking from that work at what are our strengths, where are our opportunities to grow, where are our challenges, and then taking those findings back to you ultimately, but also back to my guiding coalition, which has just been formed and is just getting off the ground, to really formulate a collaborative leadership model to get this work done. How can we do this together? How can we take what we know and move forward together, because that's the best way for all of us to reach our goals. And then what can I personally do to support all of my staff members in doing that work? So that's how I see this work progressing. All of the areas that I'm addressing are in our strategic plan, and I know you are from the strategic plan, which you all know really well. So I won't really go into listing what you already know about those areas, but at Center, some of the work that we're doing around communication, which is the first bucket of work. Already we've started our newsletter, which is coming out bi-weekly now. We'll be aligning that work with colleagues and with the other schools and just with our vision for Nashoba. We'll also be looking a lot at how we are communicating generally with parents, how are we communicating about student progress. We've just launched into that at the school level with the STAR assessments and Renaissance platform with teachers and talking to parents at conferences. So a lot more work to be done around that, and what does that look like collectively, and how are we ensuring that we are all providing the same types of communication that our parents need, being responsive to the community, and also getting out the information that we know is important to share. In terms of accessing and supporting all learners, the work at Center will be very grounded in professional learning communities, or PLCs. This is something I'm very sort of grounded in. It's a data-driven process. This work, by the way, is already in process. It's really about just redefining it, putting some parameters around it, and utilizing the new tools and things that we have now at hand to go forward. And so again, it's all the work that we're doing is building on great work that's already there, on the great foundation that's already at Center. So we'll be looking historically at that, looking at where we are collectively as a school right now, and how do we take that forward, or how do we take the data that we have, drive learning forward, ultimately evolve our scheduling so that we can support flex time, so that we can differentiate among students at the grade level across the school on a regular basis, and really take some of those high student needs and address them at the classroom level. So that's kind of getting a little bit in the weeds here, but that's where Center will be going, I'm quite sure, when we have all this information. And then equitable access for all learners, grounded in a lens with diversity, equity, and inclusion at the forefront. That's where our work with SEL will come in. And boy, that has just really risen to the surface recently. Certainly some of the needs in our broader community right now have become very clear. And I would say also our students are showing us that they're ready to take the lead and have a voice in how they fill up, what I would call their invisible toolkit. How do they get what they need to navigate the world? So we'll be doing embedding social emotional learning in the academic experiences that students are having. Compassionate teaching is some of the work we've done as administrators. Our mental health teams have done that, and that's coming into play in terms of how our MTSS system, our support system for students, is coming forward. So I know I'm going into a lot of detail, but there's a lot percolating at Center, And I really, and then also safety, we'll be working on safety, so I'm going to leave that out. Alice protocols, we're getting ready to do our evacuation drills, and really returning to a robust ability to practice that post-COVID. And I really wanted to end with another piece of work that we're just going to be starting with No Place for Hate. So this is a national program through the Anti-Defamation League, and this is where student voice comes in. Our 4th and 5th graders will be given the opportunity to lead this work. They'll be creating culture surveys. They'll be deciding what it is they need to learn, what all the students at our school need to learn. And it's really grounded in respect for each other. Kindness is table stakes in elementary school, but respect elevates that in a different way, so we can be kind even when, and maybe even more importantly, when we notice the differences in one another. And so these are the kind of things that I hope to inform with all the research, with entry meetings and data, and move forward with staff. So I think that's kind of covers a lot. And again, I could go on and on, but I'll stop. Unless you have some questions.
Thanks, Principal Dulsky. What questions might you all have around the beginning stages of this entry? Is there anything that you'd like to add, Kurt?
Yeah, there is. When Ms. Dulsky and I sat, I don't know, a month ago or so, and talked about the structure of her entry plan, I thought, oh, how clever. She's breaking the mold on the entry plans. And I thought it was such a clever way to look at our own organization as we constructed this strategic plan, and in crafting it around those core areas is going to be, I think, a great feedback device for us, so that we're always in that cycle of self-reflection and self-examination for continual improvement. So very appreciative that Ms. Dulsky has designed her entry plan in such a way that's going to continue to bring that cycle of self-reflection to our work. So well done.
I wonder, what is the timeline for findings?
Yes, timeline for findings. So we line these up. You'll hear from Ms. Friend and Mr. Mulcairn first. I think we're lining that up. We'll have to look at the planning calendar, but I think we're looking at April, and then the following meeting would be Ms. Dulsky, beginning in May. Is I think where we put it on the planning calendar.
Oh, it's on there.
Yeah, I'll take a look. And if it's not, we'll get it on there when we get to the planning calendar. So yes, that'll be at the conclusion of the year. But prior to when we take a look at our strategic plan for any updates to the strategic plan, because we want to benefit by what they discover and learn about the organization.
Yeah, it's actually a really interesting scenario where we have 3 very talented leaders kind of testing the strategic plan.
That's right.
And finding, where it can plant itself.
It's being pressure tested on a daily basis.
Yeah, seriously, yeah.
Principal Dulsky, it's a pleasure to meet you, finally. Thank you for the work you're doing. Thank you for your entry plan. I continue to be a really big fan of these very impactful, thoughtful, reflective plans. This is sort of an IT question. This is just the next in line of several entry plans that we've had in the district. And the last meeting I think that we had here, we talked about it. This was becoming embedded in our culture. Mm-hmm. I think it's important that those of us and the public who are interested in sort of reviewing these plans have ready access to them. I'm just wondering where these documents live so that we can access them and review them as we're sort of moving through the academic year.
They do live in the meeting materials of the school committee meetings. We don't necessarily post them online, but I'll leave that to Ms. Dulsky to work with her school council on what they think the best way to show that is, as she has been working with her school council on both the school improvement plan and the central plan.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, Maureen?
I was wondering about the professional learning communities. It seems like they've already been in place. Are they getting modified? Or is there a change that's happening there? Or
You're right. I mean, professional learning community is a research-based term for teachers working together using student data to drive instruction. That's not new. It's been around forever. All of our teachers do this. And that's in place in different ways with different grade levels. So really, what I think it's going to look like really district-wide and certainly at Center is having our guiding coalition take a look, again, looking at what practices are in place now. What is everyone doing now? What are the similarities? What are the differences? How do we want to coalesce around getting goals moving forward? And I think getting 2 goals moving forward, I think one of the big changes that I'm hoping for at Center is by working on the master schedule, which is, a gigantic chess match on the best day, as we can work towards aligning when teachers teach the same thing, for example, when the math block is in a grade level, when the literacy block is in a grade level, and we're looking at 6 or 8 week cycles of student data and focusing on a skill that we want to meet a goal with for our students, we can move students across classrooms and grade levels in what we would call flex time. My old district sometimes called it win time, what I need time. So for example, and it's very fluid, right? So we're constantly looking at where students are, what they need. It wouldn't be every day, but maybe 2 or 3 times a day. They might switch for math. So not switch for all math, but just focusing on this skill. It also puts in place a structure that allows our specialists, our special education teachers, and other special support staff a time to pull kids out when they're not missing universal instruction. So they're not missing regular math time, for example, in the classroom, but they would be getting the support they need at the very same time. So it makes the model of delivery very efficient, and it also ups the ability that we have to really do differentiation really well. So it's really a fine-tuning of professional learning communities, and now that we have Schoolzilla and STAR assessments, I'm really excited at what we can see. One of the things that came out recently in looking at that data, because I've been so curious about how is COVID going to play out in data. What are we going to see with our kids? We all know that it's impacted school systems, impacted kids, but one of the things that that STAR data or the STAR assessments are giving us is we can look across grade levels, across the whole school, and we can see, for example, okay, if we're looking at this proficiency level in math or ELA, and we are seeing a gap in some skill development area, maybe we're not looking like we're going to be proficient there. This data will also find for us what are the underlying skills that students need to get there. And what's been fascinating to me, and this is where we could use this across grade levels, is that teachers could see, for example, our second graders, somehow they're not embedding beginning, middle, and end of a story. And they don't need the second grade skill yet. They need to go back to first grade and pick that up. So we can look at that vertically across our grade levels and work on that collectively as an entire staff and make sure that we're getting kids along that road where they need to be. So it's bringing all of this together in a really powerful way.
Wow. Thank you. That's amazing.
It is. It's exciting.
Yeah. Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to add on to that, I think I'm coming back to when Mr. Haresh said at the presentation of our goals for this year that this is an audacious plan for the year, right? And I think your answer outlined how complex all these issues are and why the plan had to be audacious, because it's all tied together, so intricately tied together. And so the descriptions that you're hearing from Ms. Dulsky regarding her intentions around Center, these are intentions we have across the district right now. So this is work we're working on together, because when we're a professional learning community, it is not something we get done. It is a culture by which we do our work. And we grow and we adapt and we improve and we change, and we're in a constant cycle of self-examination. So.
Amy had a hand up?
It was just
Yeah. My question, that's really, it's great to hear you digging into the data like that and looking at vertical alignment. Are those conversations also happening between you and the principals of the other schools in the district? Like, say you've got a grade level that's really knocking it out of the park on their essays or whatever it may be, right? Are those conversations happening, like, about what's working well at your school and how they're tackling it so that they're trying it at other schools in the district?
That's such a great question with this new ability to look at data in this way. I know those conversations will happen. We have our regularly scheduled district meetings. We also have offline little groups that are happening where we're talking about all these things happening in our schools, and we're sharing all that information. And I would love to see at some point, teachers visiting other buildings and watching this instruction, because there's such mastery across this district that we can leverage just the great skills. That's one of the things that's super powerful too about this model of differentiation, because you have a teacher that really has nailed this, but teaching this particular thing, we can leverage that, you know, and as you're asking, to leverage each other's work in different buildings. So I'm sure that'll take place.
May I, Madam
Yeah,
Chair?
of course.
Ms. Vessels, we've also begun incorporating a practice of what we call our State of the Union addresses, where our principals come and they report back on the learning day in their school, and we'll have a mid-year update. So once we get through the second cycle of our benchmark assessment systems, we'll be able to have those meetings, because it'll be the first time that we actually have growth numbers in our pilot year working with this tool. So these are regular practices we're building into our leadership work.
And that was going to be my question, is the Center School State of the Union that's linked to this entry plan, is that something that has been prepared for each school already, or was that something that was just put together in the search for a new principal at Central
All of our
School?
principals gave their State of the Union addresses this summer of our ad council retreat, and it was the place at which launched our aligning what is the work locally at your building that you need to do, and as it's aligned with the strategic plan. So, Ms. Cohen, I want to thank you, because you've queued us up very nicely for the next presentation.
Are there any other questions for Principal Dulsky?
Thank you.
That was excellent. Thank you so much. Such exciting work, and we look forward to seeing how far you can bring our kids. All right, so next.
Yes, I'd like to invite up our principals, Mr. Kyle Grady, Mr. Joel Bates, Ms. Shelley Dulsky again, Mr. Sean O'Shea, and Dr. Kate Boyd. And there's some extra chairs, just come to the table here. Our principals, this is, I have to say to the committee, this is one of those moments, and I've been saying this through some of our meetings, it's like we're having these benchmark moments of, if you will, promises delivered, at least the beginning of them, right? So we said all along at the beginning of last year, we needed to go through this process of strategic planning, superintendent entry, so that we can lay the agenda and the systems for the future. And as Dr. McCarthy did so well in training us of how, when we're aligned as a school system, our strategic plan will feed through the ecosystem of the school system, so that everyone is pointing in the direction of what our goals are in the strategic plan. And so this year, we've committed across the leadership team here at the central office, as well as with our principals, to focus in on our plans and aligning those plans to the strategic plan, with walking that next to our educators next year. So with that being said, I want to just say our principals have done a great job in coming together to bring forward some common goals on this plan, and I'll let them take it away. And I think I hand it off to you, Mr. Bates.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present our school improvement plans collectively to you tonight. You have the individual plans as well. Alita, as we go through this, I think the animation, you may want to stop as you get to each slide, because it'll flow all the way through if we don't stop it partially. So we can go to the next slide, just in terms of the process. We're known for our whimsy. So in terms of the steps that brought us to the documents that you have, as Superintendent Downing said, as Ms. Dulsky alluded to, it started at our administrative retreat. We were charged with developing these state of the school presentations with a number of different data sources to take a deep dive into what we know, what we think we know, and what we'd like to know more about. And so in reviewing that data and presenting that, to look at our school improvement plans of the past, what we'd accomplished, what we still have left to do, it started to gel for us in this process of where we want to go as schools relative to where we want to get to around the competencies of the Portrait of a Nashoba graduate. And so step 2 from that point was the 5 of us in a room together looking at our strategic plan and where those goals that we could leverage as schools versus those as a district, we wanted to capture and work in that line, that through line, so that we're supporting the strategic plan. From there, we identified short and long-term goals that were consistent with the strategic initiatives. And so what you will see as we go through this process is that the goals for all of the schools, pre-K through 8, are consistent. And the action plans seek to help us achieve those goals, which works in concert with the strategic plan. Our last step is to go through that feedback process with our school councils and present our drafts, seek their input and feedback, review that, and have the school improvement plans become living documents that serve very much in the same capacity as an entry plan, that we are presenting to our community, ways in which we are holding ourselves accountable with goals toward where we want to go as a school. So our first goal, an important part of the strategic plan, is to develop consistent communication systems, structures, procedures across all of the schools with comprehensive communication plans. Back to the second. And you will see that in the pre-K through 8 goals, they're consistent. The Nashoba Regional High School's goals are a little bit different. They're on the same themes, in the same buckets, if you will. But because Nashoba Regional High School is singled out in the strategic plan, that's why it looks a little different. And Dr. Boynton will talk to that. And so I will turn it over to my colleague, Mr. Gray.
Thank you. Yeah, I just want to underscore how awesome it is that we're so tightly aligned with our goals. That's not something that I've experienced before, and it's empowering. And I think it's also very exciting to be able to see that there's like vertical alignment with the strategic plan. It really, to piggyback on Shelley's, maritime. It feels like we're paddling in the same direction, and we're working towards similar goals. So. That feels exciting at the building level. Principal Dulsky pointed out earlier this idea of professional learning communities. That is a significant piece. That is the central focus of our goal too. You've heard a little bit about how they're data-driven, how it's teachers, counselors, folks that are all working together to work on their practice, to work on student achievement. They will take different forms in the different schools, but there's a universal underpinning for all of those that kind of keeps it similar. The data we might look at might be a little different. The things that come out of those meetings might be a little bit different, but the goal is that it impacts our student achievement and our teaching practices. It also wonderfully tightly aligns with some of the stuff that we're doing with teaching and learning, namely our book reads. So this year we're reading UDL. As administrators, we're reading the UDL playbook. It's an excellent book. It's helpful. It's very helpful when we go into our professional learning communities to be able to identify things that we want to work on, and it gives practical solutions like a playbook would, and how you would work on those things. That also aligns with the book read that the district is doing, and that's UDL Now, which I believe there's a self-paced module, and then there's a virtual module for people who want to be in person. So again, that theme of alignment and the resources that we're using, and kind of going in the same direction. And thanks to T&L for setting up those book reads. And I think Sean, are you next?
Yeah, cool.
Joe.
Back to me. So this goes back to our strategic objective about equitable opportunities and outcomes for all students. And here we all aligned around integrating social emotional learning best practices into daily instruction in student life. So it really takes our daily instruction piece is where we're going to see across the schools our MTSS systems, our multi-tiered systems of support for students grow. This is where we're really identifying students' needs and informing what we're going to how we're going to respond to those needs from a really deep level. Our work with Larry Epstein and Compassionate Teaching is a framework that we're already starting to implement when we're looking at how do we best meet student needs. It's not just from an academic perspective, and I've already talked about the amazing data we have there coming in, but it's also really, what are those underpinnings, the social emotional state of students now. They can't even access learning if we haven't addressed those needs first. And so this is really going to inform what we're doing at that level. Our mental health staff is being trained in that as well, and this will eventually roll out to our teachers. It also includes us looking at integrating social emotional learning into our academics, into our classrooms. This comes in all different forms depending on the school, so you'll see different ways of us meeting that goal across our improvement plans. And then the other piece of that is just student life, the culture, the water that we're swimming in at all of our schools. What does that feel like? What are we addressing? We're getting ready, our working group on a new Panorama Culture Survey is coming very soon. That's going to be telling us a lot of information about how our students are doing. And as we all know, the world has tilted, and we need to figure out what it is they need, what it is our staff needs to do all of our best work. So these goals in this realm are going to address those things.
Mr. O'Shea.
So it brings us to goal 4. This was an area that was added onto the strategic plan, I believe in June or so. And this is a chance for us to really dig back into some of our safety procedures, particularly the ALICE protocol, work with our nurse leader, Gil Blicky, local first responders to really dig into our safety procedures and practices, establish safety committees, or reinvigorate our safety committees in each town, in each school, and look at all those and refine them from what we were doing, re-implement, and then edit and move forward with those so that we have really tight procedures and protocols that are consistently implemented on a timely basis for all of our safety procedures.
And so our next slide is specific to Nashoba Regional High School.
One quick update. Our girls won. Girls field hockey. Great update. So we'll be playing whoever wins in the other rounds, round of 16. So we'll go to the round of 8, and that is at home on Sunday, Sunday afternoon. I'll share the time. Not sure, that's TBD. So hot off the presses, we won. So as you sort of see, the high school has some unique goals, and that's really driven from the outcomes of the strategic plan. That said, I feel a tremendous amount of alignment and support from my principal colleagues, and under the surface, know that the work that is happening and the priority areas that are happening at the other schools is work that we're doing at the high school still. I just needed to set some priorities. Otherwise, I would have 10 goals, and that's untenable. So we needed to really narrow them down. And what, after much conversation with Laura and with Kirk, I centered it with a through line that really was emphasized in our entry plans as well as the strategic plan, and that is the through line of learning, teaching, and leading. And the need at the high school level to truly engage in this authentic audit of curriculum and begin through, thanks to the teaching and learning team, which is tremendous. I cannot sing their praises enough with the support, but really engage in this truly authentic multi-year curriculum review cycle. Selfishly, this gets us in a really good place for our NEASC work. And so this is lacking. It's a foundational element in NEASC accreditation, and this work will set us up very nicely when that comes around in a few years, right? And I have to say, in walking around all of the departments at the first early release, there were some really great conversations happening about curriculum. It was just really cool to see. Embedded within this is also elevating the leadership capacity of our department heads in sort of informal way this way, but we're providing some intentional professional development, because without their leadership, this work can't happen. And so that's embedded in there. So that curriculum alignment and articulation is really the first goal. The second goal is to take a look at the high school schedule. I think it's come up in conversation consistently, and it's come up in entry plan findings and work that the high school schedule in particular needs to really have a deep dive taken into it, and to really see what schedule would best facilitate the use of instructional time and give our students better access to course offerings as well as opportunities for deeper learning. 45 minutes and with 7 transitions during the day is a lot. And so we've just now met as a working group with my department heads on what kind of data we want to look at as we begin the scheduling audit. I should note that all of these goals are multi-year goals out of necessity. This is work that really needs to be dug into. And there is certainly a process outlined in the contract around approving a final schedule, and engaging with the NREA around that is important as well. The other deep dive that we're taking into is the process of leveling courses at the high school, and taking a look really around, are there barriers to access to higher level courses for some students in subgroups? Are we unintentionally creating those barriers through those levels? And authentically taking a look in the mirror at how we level our students, and are we preventing some students from accessing courses that they could thrive in? And that is also work led by not only myself, but the leadership team with the department heads. Again, this work is critical for them to be a part of, and then what they'll be able to do is take the learning and the discovering that we're doing in our working group and bring it back to department meetings for a feedback loop and conversation, and then that elevates the future conversations as full faculty. So again, multi-year process, but we are digging in and have identified the data that we would like to gather. And the last goal was one that we really started last year, and I have to say that the protocol from the Compassionate Teaching has really provided us a wonderful framework. We've already started to use it in our STAT team, and we're in implementation phase with this, and continuing to refine our STAT process. And one of the key features that we're very excited about is after school, where we're now able to elicit teacher participation for this and get teacher feedback. So it's very exciting, and I can't wait to provide updates. So thank you.
So, just in closing, we want to make sure we get to the good graphic. No, keep going. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
So, keep going. It's supposed to end with it in the middle. The school improvement plans and the strategic plan, with the schools working in concert, come together to realize the core competencies of the portrait of the Nashoba graduate. No.
Pause. Madam Chair, if I just may add, thank you, team. The full comprehensive reports are included in your packets that show all the detail that the schools are working on, so you have that information. And so you should see that through, as Mr. Dates and the team outlined, to the strategic plans.
So what questions might you have, or comments? It's a lot. Yeah, go ahead, Amy.
Yeah, it was a lot to take in, but it's also very exciting and inspiring to actually be in the same room with all of you and see you sitting next to each other. I was thinking that this wouldn't have been as effective over Zoom, to have given that presentation. So I was reflecting that it was good that we were meeting in person tonight to receive that presentation, but I think it's really exciting that we worked together to develop common goals and then create the school improvement plans from those goals. So thank you.
Thank you. We're excited about the work.
It's very grounding to have the strategic plan to rely on. I would also add that I see, not invisibly, but I see at the center of everything you guys were just talking about are our kids. And everything that you guys are building is built for them. And so, you know, these things are for, you know, what all the adults are doing, but ultimately it's all guided by our, you know, what you want to do for our kids. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel like I just want to stand up and cheer. This is so, it's just so exciting. And I've said this a number of times, and I don't mean to be repetitive, but I felt for a long time like this district is just poised and it's ready to go, and it is taking off. And it is so exciting to sit in this room and to hear the things that you're saying, and to hear your goals and all of these things coming together. And to have this team and the other administrators that are here is astounding. I just feel like I want to jump up and down. It would be very professional, but it would be very preschool of me.
Agreed.
Well, I mean, I'll continue to defer if you want to cheer. But
go right ahead.
Yeah, I don't want to be redundant, but it's very impressive. So thank you all. I know that there was some deep collaboration in the early stages, the administrative retreat, and I apologize if I didn't catch this during the presentation, but are there going to be opportunities to come together during sort of like the formative parts, and then as you kind of conclude to sort of communicate what you've learned and how ideas and findings can be transferred from one school to another?
Okay.
Go ahead.
There's a lot of power in the purpose of what we're doing, and it's all collective. Instead of us, making our individual plans and so on, now when we get together and we have very thoughtful discussions at our principal meeting, our administrative meetings, which happen twice a month, and they're all focused on the same language and the same goals, and it keeps us really grounded and speaking the same language all the time. So, and then on top of that, there are other opportunities we've set up besides the district level meetings where we are meeting on a regular basis to talk about these things. So it is, there are formal and informal methods to keep us on track, but having the strategic plan, as said many times, and just having the common language to talk back and forth has been very powerful, and it keeps us pushing forward.
Yeah, so one question that had just occurred to me is that the plans that that are in our meeting materials that kind of grow from the school, the collaborative school improvement plan, are those now going to school councils for feedback? And then these will be finalized at a later stage, or is that the process of?
So I think we're in various stages of the interaction with school councils, but it's a dynamic document. We will be reporting out to school councils on progress toward the goals in the short term and the long term, and I'm sure reporting out to you as well in terms of where we are relative to these goals.
I agree, this is all very exciting. I have 2 questions on it. Wondering if you've had any feedback from staff on how they feel about the changes that are going to be taking place, and also any thoughts on involving the community, because like if we're talking about the kids being a community in school, we kind of need to get those families on board too. So is there any thought on that yet, or
I think
future?
Yeah, yes, I think all of us are looking at a collaborative leadership model. what you're speaking to at the high school is also happening at all of our schools. So we can't do this work by writing the plan and saying go. You know, we all have to be in it together. And I think part of this work, we're all involving the community in these conversations as this starts to roll out. Initial stages here, but you know, there's a lot that we need community feedback on. I know for sure at Center, as part of my entry plan, that will be happening, and just getting feedback so we can be responsive to the needs of each of our locations.
And that work, I mean, starts by statute with school councils, and so, having the opportunity to work together so that our goals fit with and lead into the strategic plan was the starting place, but that has to go through school council and, you know, get their approval and work with school councils on that, and then come to you, and then out to the faculties and have conversations about, you know, what are the technical challenge and adaptive challenges to working through achieving these goals.
You can imagine. Oh, sorry, Sean. Go ahead.
I was just going to, so the superintendent and assistant superintendent came to each of our buildings and rolled out the strategic plan. And
yes,
and that was the, you know, starting point for them to hear beyond like the opening day message of the broader themes to really dig into the details, and then school council. So, and there is a lot of, you know, hope and enthusiasm around what has been articulated there by the staff, and now it's just, you know, in the practice, what's next, and them being involved. It kind of set the stage where we have a lot of working groups going on. You heard about the panorama and working group, the scheduling work, you know, and people are volunteering. They want to be a part of that change. They want to be a part of this solution in the process. So that set the stage, and now it's playing out, and they're excited. At least as measured by their participation.
Yeah. And if I'm correct, you both were talking about coming and visiting with our school councils and running through the strategic plan. Yeah. And the school council is made up of parents and students and faculty members, which somewhat captures the groups that you're talking about. And in previous years, we would then roll out our school improvement plans with our staff, and then we work with staff to try to identify their personal, their professional, and their student learning goals, and we encourage them to try to find ways where they fit with our school improvement plan in the same way that our school improvement plans are fitting with the strategic plan. So there's a sort of, again, that vertical alignment.
I'll speak to some specific steps at the high school. High school age students are, like, we want their input. So not only through the school council, which I have 4 student members, 4 parent members, and 4 staff, I have a student council, and we'll be working with student council to get their input, in particular about the schedule, right, around that, and thoughts on leveling. I also meet regularly with my building reps and shared the draft of the strategic plan with them for feedback, and then also elicited, shared with my department heads and the leadership team for their input as well, and we'll be sharing with staff probably in December's meeting.
Nice. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, principals.
Madam Chair, I would like just take a moment to point out, you'll notice on some of the goals, they're multi-year goals. So as we've talked about, like sort of that cycle of the plans and when they come into play, now our principals are equipped, we're aligned in this way so that they can begin the school improvement plan work that they need to do in May, thus queuing up the work now that we can do over the summer, so we're not behind the 8 ball, so that when we enter into the school year, the next iteration of the school council is advised of what the previous council has advanced forward in the plan. So we're now at that point where we can be in front of it.
Cogs are finally interlocking.
Yes, so I can't thank our principals enough. This is an amazing group of educational leaders that have, coalesced to do some wonderful work for our system. So we're very grateful to them.
Yes, we are. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I know, we're really
For your education, everybody, we will be approving these plans at our next meeting. Right?
Yeah.
So now we're going to move on to our next matter of business.
Sorry.
And that is the Washington DC Middle School trip. So thank you guys for circling the desk and then sitting back down.
Sean, why you bring sit on chairs?
All right, so this is a long-awaited conversation. Several years now, I know that several classes have, had to forsake the trip, and so I look forward to this update.
I feel like Don Pardo tonight as we set up each at the moment. This is a long way to mama. Our 3 middle school principals are coming forward tonight to ask for your support in returning to Washington D.C. for a middle school trip. But I'm going to let them present because I think they have some exciting improvements and some updates to talk about in this. So I turn it over to the 3 of you. Mr. Grady.
Thank you for us to be here for this. I know our students are very excited about the possibility of a trip, and this should be, because it's exciting. It's a bookend for them, and it's something, quite honestly, that they deserve after the years that they put into their middle school. Where we are right now is very early in just exploration and finding out costs. Generalized things like motor coach availability, hotel availability. It started about a month ago when we sat down to review the goal behind the trip. Where does it connect educationally? And we had some staff with us. We had teaching and learning there, and the 3 of us sat and we really wrestled with where does this connect academically to our students' lives, without forgetting that it is also a fun trip, and that is an important key component to it. We do have some language there in our proposals around the purpose of the trip and where it connects academically. You can look for that if you wanted the more specifics. But again, we're here just to present to you and hopefully have some approval to continue to look at what would be a plan to go to Washington, D.C. Not everything that we have today can we speak on in its entirety or with a lot of specificity. There are some components that we have more understanding of where we'll be. And we have right now 2 different tour companies that are working to provide us with some competitive rates. I will say up front that one thing that we are definitely facing that is not something we faced in years past was a significant increase for all the reasons that you can imagine, right? So it is more expensive. That in turn means that the sooner we can get some approval, we can start doing the things we need in regards to fundraising efforts with our parents and families.
And to lock in.
And to lock in, right, exactly. Lock in our dates and our motor coaches.
Yeah, I would say that's the most critical piece, to be able to move forward with the logistics of planning it. The motor coaches especially are in short supply.
Right. And just sorry to add on to that, we're not able to make any firm reservations or deposits until we have that approval.
Nor would we without this.
Of course, here.
I already presented on Nature's Classroom once, and so I think my stance on active learning and travel and how important that is for kids. And I think this is another fantastic opportunity. And at that time, you were asking about why not all of us and or connectivity across the district. And just like the strategic plans, this was a great opportunity for us to come and really think it through thoughtfully together and work on a proposal together to benefit all the students.
In your packets, you have, I believe, 2 proposals in Lancaster and Stowe based on the itinerary that would have been in place for the 2019 trip, adjusted for estimates of what the cost would be. The only reason that the Bolton proposal is different from 2023 tour proposal is that it's the other tour company. We're working with all three schools are working with both companies to try and leverage the best possible deal, but just to give you the perspective of that. As Mr. Grady said, it's in all three proposals, the cost has gone up, and but the itineraries are essentially the same. We want the same things for our kids.
There are some things that are, some smaller items that are different for each of the schools based on some of the things that happened in years past that are kind of important sort of experiences, but generally speaking, the educational experiences, the length of the trip, all of those, the form of travel, those are all very much the same.
It's a 4-day trip. It's the experiences are essentially the same.
So do you mind if we ask you some questions?
Please.
Okay.
Do you have a sense, maybe historically speaking, how much fundraising has the potential to defray the cost, especially given that the costs have gone up so much?
Yeah. It's not a significant percentage. It's we're looking at for each school somewhere around $100,000, and
what is the increase from past years? Maybe a couple $100 per student.
Yeah.
Or about 100.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the fundraising could maybe take care of 25%? Or 10%? It depends on the kid?
Yeah, I mean, we typically would have already been doing a significant amount of fundraising already, and the fundraising would have been planned at the end of last year to begin this year, so the fundraising has not been planned. So our fundraising efforts are quite behind. Having said that, speaking solely for Hale, in years past, we would not be able to get upwards of 25% of the trip paid for by fundraising. We would really look at like individual students who would need partial or full scholarships and target our fundraising efforts for those students, with a hope that if we had some large fundraising events that we might be able to defray the cost, but it's not hundreds of dollars per student. It's, in the past we've been able to drop the overall cost maybe by $35. But we target students who need those partial or full scholarships with the fundraising efforts.
So the fundraising is pooled then?
Yes.
It's not done individually?
Yeah.
No, got it.
We do have some family members, current students, families, and former student families members who like to sponsor a student on the trip.
I would just add to that. I think, because it's my first year, I think in the past in Burbank, I think individual students did individual fundraising that would defer their own cost. Then there was also scholarship opportunities to defer the cost of others. In the past week, I have some very eager families who are waiting for this discussion tonight, who are already putting forward ideas of trying to fundraise for all and individually both. So we're kind of waiting to see our next steps. Just to clarify, we want to be in line and fair.
And we, in the same way that we look at everything through an equity lens, we don't want to be in a position where we can't bring everyone whose family wants their child to go.
Any other questions? Yeah, Maury?
This might be too detailed, because it's a dates question.
Mm-hmm.
Will any of the schools overlap? Because I see that Hale has the 3 different options, and I think they coincide with Lancaster.
So at this stage, maybe.
Okay.
At this stage, it's a question of availability of lodging and motor coaches.
Okay.
The buses are the real, because some schools need like 3 buses and one school needs 2 or whatever, so it has to.
So those were
logistics.
Those dates that were provided to us as options were available to all of the schools, and some of the teachers who help run the trip maybe narrowed in more specifically on this date because it's at a time of year or around things that happen that are conducive for having a significant group of students gone. Those options don't necessarily include the dates that were just this week provided to us by Gerber Tours. So they might have some dates. They do have some dates that are outside that, but we are looking specifically to the end of May and the beginning of June for the trips to run. And we might have more availability maybe earlier in May, depending on what Gerber says. But we could overlap. We have in the past overlapped.
Yeah.
We've been in DC at the same time, but there wasn't. We weren't like traveling together or.
Different itineraries.
Yeah, we had somewhat intentionally different itineraries, but it often helps Tanya Rich, our athletic director, to know that we're all gone at the same time for athletics.
Sure. Yeah.
Same with our performances, the end of year performances for our schools.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
Related to that, have you looked into any opportunities, since there's a potential you're all going at the same time, to share buses or other resources to bring the cost down?
We did. That's one of the things we looked at. We looked at the motor coach availability, and if the motor coaches were available on the same week, that we would all travel down. And we in the past we did not as much work together to leverage two companies. We kind of would go with the company that we had always gone with, whether it was Suburban Tours or Gerber. Now we're looking at like let's collectively work together so we can say we're taking closer to 300 students. And what can you provide for us? The thing we ran up against when we first provided the company with those numbers is that they just couldn't get enough motor coaches. The maximum number they could get is 4 for one of those weeks. And we might require, if we have all of our students or nearly all of our students, 10 to use 5 motor coaches just to send 2 schools. So they hold about 55 students each. And so if you look at the enrollment for each of the grades, plus chaperones, we each need a minimum of 2. Hale could use as many as 3 buses if all of our students go.
Yeah.
In our plan, we have building on the Nashoba identity, that pre-K to 12 identity. It is our goal to do these things together. We're coming out of pandemic travel restrictions and whatnot. We're experiencing a time crunch there. So the questions you're asking are such great questions, because we want to take these learning experiences, bring them across all of our schools, and have our kids begin to integrate and build this pre-K to 12 identity. And I'm certain in the not too distant future we'll be having a conversation around outdoor classroom in the same vein. So this is our sort of launching foray into doing these things across towns.
Karen.
Can you just say a little bit more about the fundraising? Like, what does it look like? Is it just asking for donations, or are kids selling things? Like, what does that look like?
It's different for each of the 3 middle schools.
Selling poinsettias,
poinsettia sales. In the past, there was a lip sync at Florence Sawyer's.
I heard about a cakewalk today. I don't know.
So it's all different.
Yeah.
Get creative.
Yeah. Karen, we have a dance tomorrow, 5 to 7. For students, yes. It's taking the point is it's taking different forms. We rely on some of our staff who help run these events and fundraisers, but we really rely on our families to help. So it kind of gets catered to those people's interests.
Yeah, the PTO does support too. So that's another avenue.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mike?
We typically have a school committee protocol whereby something is introduced and then the next meeting it's voted upon, but given the urgency of the the importance of the fundraising and with the support of the rest of the committee, I'm going to move to approve the trips to Washington, D.C. for this spring.
I'll second that.
Any discussion?
May I just make a comment? It was brought to me just some concern about the logistics of putting the trip together and also the cost of the trip for families. So I just it felt like it's important. I want to support this trip, but I also feel like it's important to put it out there that there is concern among some of our families that it's expensive, and that there's a lot of moving pieces to pull together a trip like this.
I'm encouraged by our historical success, though, and you know how to do this, and you know how to do it well. So I think that your first point is very well taken, though, and it is a concern for families who are not in need.
And I think I'll come back to a comment Mr. Grady made. That's why in our fundraising efforts, we look to supporting those families that need it most with the channels locally at each school, because there's an element of dignity that's implied here that we want to protect it, but we do not want costs to get in the way of any child having this experience.
I was just going to add that if we were to move to approve it tonight, that would certainly just give us another 2 weeks head start on the fundraising process, so that might improve our abilities to meet those needs.
Yeah, I was just gonna say too, I don't know if you've checked in with other schools as well to see what has been really good fundraising, because I know sometimes, we had one in Hudson for a playground that raised a ton of money through this company. I can't remember what it was called, but there could be other things out there that might work. So I didn't know if because I know fundraisers can be really tough to raise a lot of money.
I also think that this is good for school councils and for PTOs to take this step on too. There are a lot of parents who are looking to do great things for our schools, and this is the moment. Even if you don't have an 8th grader, you can dig in and start helping here. So for anybody who's out there wondering how they can participate and contribute.
Circle the wagons, here we go.
Yeah. Any more discussion? Maureen,
Sorry,
go
I
for
just
it.
to say one thing, because I'm very fully aware of fundraising. PTO definitely can support it. I think they'd have to throw a one-time fundraiser for this year to get it there, but then they can build it into their plans for next year as well. But this year is going to be, the families will be hard hit this year because we'll be asking to help fund an expensive trip this year that wasn't planned for, and then building a bigger than anticipated budget in the future as well. So it is a consideration, but a one that I think is well deserved for the kids and needed too. So.
I think our fundraising step, is in close proximity to our down payments, so securing our motor coaches and our hotels. Then we're able to push out to our families who's interested in going. That's when we're going to start to have those conversations if people are expressing concern about costs, and we work with fundraising efforts. It's important also to just point out that you can't fund a trip like this by asking people to pay for it in a different way. You have to think a little quite differently. Having parents, simply pay for, to buy something only to then send a student, they're still feeling compelled to pay for something, and then that money goes indirectly to it. But to both your points, our next step, I think, in this would be to start to fundraise. Schools across the Commonwealth send 8th graders to Washington, D.C. We have very generative parents in our communities that are willing to help, and we just need to, get your approval so we can start with this.
Do you reach out to local businesses for fundraising, or is it really centered around families?
Again, I think it's taking different forms in different years when we've had people who work with businesses or have connections to those businesses.
I do know the few parents I've talked to are thinking very creatively because of the compressed timeline and the uniqueness of this, and they are a very creative group who are mobilized and they've been chomping at the bit to get going.
A good opportunity for cross-town PTO action as well.
Actually, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking along the same lines, to be one event that could raise.
Somehow tie that to the strategic plan.
Just wraps it all up.
Glad to see you again. That's good.
All right, any other discussion or jokes you'd like to crack?
That's a mic.
All right. Well, all in favor of moving forward with the DC trip? Fantastic.
Thank you for the quick action on that. Obviously, we'll come back to this committee when the plans are finalized and with actual data. So, thank you.
Thanks, guys. Thank you.
Can I put my chair back?
Thanks
Yes.
for working. All right, everybody. So we are moving on to part 1 of the Superintendent Evaluation Professional Development for the School Committee. And so, so we say part 1 because this is going to be just an introduction to the Superintendent Evaluation and what we have to come for you over the course of the year, just to refresh people's memory or give you all instruction on what the evaluation system is if you're new to the committee or the process. So I'm going to turn it over to Vice Chair Barsh, and he's going to give us a little primer here.
Sure. I'm happy to do this as the chair of the Personnel Subcommittee. I'll give you a short presentation on the formative assessment component. And I would ask... Sure.
This is not in meeting materials, but it will be promptly, so you can't see it on your screen.
It is an agenda item.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Yes.
So first I'll invite my colleagues from the Personnel Subcommittee to chime in at any moment if you have something to add, but I will also assume that this will serve the dual purpose of both checking off our agenda item and the Personnel Subcommittee update. 2 for 1.
Okay.
We'll just call it a twofer. Okay, so again, if you're familiar with the process, it's more than likely because you have been a part of it in years past, but there are some new faces on the committee. And I think probably every year there will always be new members of the committee that need these kinds of updates, and refreshers are never a bad thing anyways. So again, the formative assessment is sort of a check-in component. It's a mid-cycle review of the progress that the superintendent has made towards the goals. And you'll recall the goals we approved, I think, in mid-September. Is that right? As we continue and move towards our survey and the actual formative assessment, we'll provide those goals for you if you can't locate them. Can we move to the next slide? Thank you. We put this up here just as a reminder that this is one of the Personnel Subcommittee's goals. I'm going to assume full literacy on the part of all of our members here, but just to be clear, one of our goals is to get full participation in the summative process. The formative process is a little bit more passive, if that's an appropriate word. We're really just getting an update from the superintendent at the formative stage. And it's the summative component where we're providing our feedback. We will hold a small training session before the formative stage and the summative stage, just to sort of keep everyone current and kind of ahead of the process. This is a really important piece. Well, why don't we go to the next slide? We really have 3 primary, our purview covers 3 primary topics. The first, of course, is policy, and this is something that's always good to remind ourselves. The first is establishing policy. The second is adopting a budget that the district has crafted, and then the third one is the hiring and the evaluation of the superintendent. So this is really one of the 3 big things that are within our purview. So it is really critical, I think, in the formative stage, but also especially at the summative component. Next slide. For those of us that did this last year, I think this was this presented by Mary? Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Mary really focused on the 5-step cycle. We're kind of 40% or so of the way into it, maybe something like that. We did have a goal setting and plan development session, again, which we approved of in September. And Ross is the implementation, which is a year-long process.
I'm worried about that all night.
So the superintendent is currently in the implementation phase, as you notice from every meeting. And then sometime mid-year, sometime around February, we will do the formative assessment where, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Superintendent Downing, but you'll provide us with a presentation, an update on your progress meeting those goals.
Yeah, so what you're going to get in February is our team has put together, Ms. Friend is a great organizer in this, and all the work that we've been presenting to you is on a matrix that addresses all the school improvement, all the district improvement goals and initiatives. So you'll be getting that. So the formative is really going to be a lot of information, and it's the conversation from the formative meeting that is essentially the direction I'm getting, like, okay, at the summative meeting, you want to hear more about X. So essentially, formative meeting, we show you all of our work, or we've done to that point. I need your feedback to say, when you come for summative presentation, more information on X, Y, and Z.
Right, so one thing that we talked about
I should say, pardon me,
so go ahead.
Evidence as opposed to information.
Evidence, right. One of the things that we talked about in our last meeting was kind of trying to hammer out why this is so important. And this is really one of only a handful of ways that the school committee can directly engage with the superintendent and provide direction, request clarity, as Superintendent Downing stated. So the formative step is more of a feedback. Well, I guess both of them are feedback, but the formative session will allow the school committee to guide the superintendent in different directions so that we can be sure that those goals are being met in the ways that they've been presented. Is that a fair way of describing it?
It's also a place, pardon me.
Go right ahead.
Sorry. It is also a place where, as we take an honest look as a leadership team of progress towards the year on that very audacious plan we've laid forward, where I would be coming to you to say, we forecast we're going to get this far with these efforts. We forecast in these other efforts that we're going to be rolling those over into the next era. So you'll get a sense of then how we begin to work on our overall 5-year plan in a rollover fashion.
I would say too that keeping in mind, guys, that all of the superintendent's goals, as distant as he sometimes is from students, all of his goals are about student achievement.
That's right.
And that's what the school committee is responsible for, is ensuring that the district is helping students make progress, effective progress. And so looking for that evidence through what he presents to make sure that it is all pushing down to the kids.
And if I may add, and it goes beyond just the goal, there's also the evaluation standards that you'll be getting the evidence tied to those standards that will be presented to you.
Right, so that ties into the survey. We did work on crafting a new version of the survey that those of us who were on the committee last year got. So that will be a way to allow us to measure how comfortable you are with both the formative and the summative process. So we'll work on that at our next meeting, and we'll probably have it available and sent out sometime in late December. Is that what we said? And then, of course, in May, we have the summative evaluation, which is giving and providing written feedback, and that feedback goes to Superintendent Downing's DESI file. Correct.
His rating does.
DESI ratings. Okay. Okay, I think, was that the last slide? I think so. Does anyone have any questions on this process? This is really just an update as to where we're going. It'll get a little bit more concrete once we get that survey out and we get a sense of where collectively we're at.
Because the survey will inform the training that we do at the January meeting to get everybody ready for the formative assessment. So the survey is just a tool for you guys to tell us what you need.
Quick survey, it's probably somewhere from 7 to 10 questions. It'll take you maybe 5 minutes, 10 tops.
Any other questions about the evaluation process or what Mike just shared? All right, so more to come on that. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. And thanks, Amy. Personnel Subcommittee member. All right, everybody, so moving on to our last item in new business, it is with great pleasure that I turn to Attorney Gleason. He attended the MAS-CMASS joint conference in Hyannis, Joe?
Yes.
And he's going to share with us, as is right, all of his insights.
Yeah, I was shocked and amazed to see that this is put on for 10 minutes this evening. I will not take
I'm starting the timer.
I won't take the committee's time up with 10 minutes of insight on the MAS-CMS joint conference. I will just say, first of all, thank you to the taxpayers of the district for subsidizing my trip down to Hyannis for this conference. I'll just take 10 seconds to tell you that it was probably the best attended conference that I've been to over the last several years. There was a huge number of people there, more than I've ever seen in the past. And I only share with the committee maybe one little nugget of a little pearl of wisdom that was provided to attendees by a gentleman named Brian Cameron. He's the superintendent of schools in Belchertown, and it was during a presentation on the administration of medicine and medical services in public schools put on by the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. He was sitting on the panel. And while I will tell you that the Department of Public Health presenter somewhat monopolized the time of the presentation, he threw out a little pearl of wisdom in response to a question that had been posed by a school committee member from the town of Sandwich regarding crafting policies in regards to medical administration, and she seemed a little bit overwhelmed by the whole process. And he was very keen to point out that, you know, as far as school districts in the Commonwealth are concerned, that relative to creating policy, whether it be medical administration or any matter, his district was very keen to look at various and sundry sources for policy. They weren't a one-source-fits-all type of district, and I thought that was very informative and very insightful, and I hope that's something that we as a committee will do in the future with regards to our policies. Not just look at our one single source, but to look at various sources and to get various opinions on what it is that we craft and establish in our district. And that, Madam Chairman, I will leave it to you.
Thanks, Joe. Glad you could be there.
Thanks, Joe.
All right. Any questions about the conference for Joe? No, it's great that you went. Thanks, Joe. We have no unfinished business tonight, so we move on to our subcommittee reports at 4 minutes ahead of time.
Wow.
I know, and with your PSD savings time, the twofer.
The twofer,
Probably
right.
more than that. But give us what you know, budget and more at subcommittee.
Well, I can't remember if did we have an update the last time? I mean, the last meeting we had was end of October, so we may have had the update in the last meeting. We're meeting again next Monday, I believe, the 14th at 7. So there's no real update. I would just take this opportunity to publicly invite members of the public to attend Budget and Warrant. We had some colorful conversation about the budget process, looking back at operation reports, and a lot of questions and misconceptions and concerns can be addressed at those meetings. So again, that meeting is happening on the 14th at 7 o'clock. Hope to see some attendance. And I will be, as usual, that's part of our budget and warrant goal for the year. I will be reaching out to various members of the towns to participate in that as well.
And that's on Zoom.
It's on Zoom? Yeah.
Very good. Over to communication. Sharon. Oh, I'm sorry. It should say Sharon will report. Ms. Buck, what can you tell us?
So we met on Monday, and we are in the process of refining ideas and putting together some thoughts for bringing a school committee newsletter into being. I have a question. I emailed you a question, actually. I think that what we need to do is put together a proposal and present that to the committee with the ideas for what could be included in the newsletter.
I wonder if you were able to see the email that I sent to you very late today.
I did not.
I did reply after Kirk and I met today.
Okay.
Maybe actually Kirk could provide the committee with the answer that you gave to me. on
Yeah.
communication strategy.
Okay.
It's similar to, I reached out to Member Cohen as well, relative to the school building committee. The company we've engaged with, Apogee, for the rebuilding of our communication strategy that will go into play with a new website and all that stuff July 1. In the design phase and the build-up phase of this, we're going to have access to their communication templates and pathways. So without going into a description of what all that is, Ms. Puck, I would invite you and Ms. Vessels to have me attend your next meeting, and we can talk about synergies, because there's potential synergies with that product that might simplify the goals of what you're talking about in that meeting.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
And it interfaces with social media as well, and
Yeah, we can certainly come back to you and as we get farther along in the process to brief you on what is to come. But yes, through the app, you can push out a singular communication to multiple social media platforms, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, while also populating your website and your email queues with one touch. So these are all, this is a comprehensive strategy we're going to use, because, for instance, in terms of the school building project, accessing to our residents that don't have a straight line connection to the school system, but they do have a straight line connection to their grandkids through Facebook. And that's where they find and see. So if we get these things all set up and aligned and with our new products, and they do the setup aspects of that, so we don't have to do that. So let's use them for what we're paying them to do in setting up those pathways.
nope, that's it. Awesome. Over to the building committee.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Our next meeting is scheduled for next Tuesday, the 15th, and at the top of our agenda will be a discussion on delivery methodology that the district will look to embrace relative to this project. For those of you who are not familiar with this, the traditional methodology would be the design, bid, build methodology. We're also going to be looking at what's called CM at risk, or construction management risk. For those of you who are not in the building trades, and I'm not one of them either, it might be prudent for you to take a few minutes to read up a little bit about CM at risk. This is becoming the new methodology, delivery methodology used by a lot of public procurement projects. So there will be some discussion and recommendations made in this regard relative to the methodology of how we're going to deliver this project. In addition to that, if we do embrace the CM at risk, there is a distinct possibility that we'll be accelerating our request for funding for 2023. Originally, we were looking at the latter part of 2023, but if we do go CM at risk, we're looking probably at June of 2023 for funding requests. In the meantime, I want to thank Ms. Cohen, Ms. Viverito, and Superintendent Downing, who has been ably assisting me, and the committee in regards to some outreach with regards to our select boards. We've recently met with the Lancaster Select Board as well as the Stowe Select Board. We're meeting on the 17th with the Bolton Select Board. We've also met with all the town administrators for input in their regard relative to how we can better get out the message as to what this project is all about. As Superintendent Downing had just alluded to, there are some groups of individuals in our district that are a little bit disconnected from our usual communication conduits, and the town administrators gave Ms. Cohen and myself, who we met with Superintendent Downing last week, some insight into where we may want to concentrate some of our efforts over and above the information that we provide here at our meetings of the building committee, as well as on our website. And to quote one of our members, our town administrator from Bolton, Mr. Lowe, he says that no matter what we do, there are people in this district who will simply not look at the website. So we're going to need to provide some different communication conduits to these individuals, and I know that Ms. Cohen is just jived to begin this, so. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thanks, Jeff. And I am going to skip over personnel, is okay, and go right to policy. Karen. Karen?
Policy is meeting on Monday next week, so we don't have a report at this time, we'll have one for Sunday.
Great, and I'm going to be joining you at that meeting.
I saw that, thank you.
All right, great. And then let's go over to audit advisory. Maureen, any update?
Yes, we were supposed to meet tomorrow, but I did not post the meeting early enough. So it's going to be next Wednesday or Thursday. We have to finalize that. And I'll post it early enough.
And how is your membership? Do you have a full contingent yet?
No, we still have the opportunity to have a member from Stowe if there's any interest.
Any community member?
Any community member, yeah.
Okay, great. Over to Dear Jay.
November 2nd. They have put together a calendar, a mini calendar for the year, so they will meet one time a month throughout the school year, and then they will have working groups also meeting one time a month. And the working groups will focus on projects or areas of interest. So, for example, a current project is working to support the district as they work through the choice of a partner to work with for an equity audit. And that information on the projects that they're working on, as well as meeting dates, are posted on the Dear J tab on the NRSD website. And their next meeting will be November 30th.
November 30th. Okay, great. I'll share. And then to CPAC. Oh, I'm sorry.
I can wait, but I just noticed that negotiations isn't included on this list, so.
Is that appropriate to include regular updates? That might just actually be a special update that we can provide irregularly.
Okay, I didn't mean to the content, but just the fact that we have met.
Madam Chair, if I may.
Sure. Yeah.
Any updates we would give on negotiations would be done in executive session.
Got it.
So
Okay.
that's when we have updates, we would do that in executive session.
And we did alert the community that that's underway.
Yes.
Okay, perfect.
Great, thanks, Amy. Okay, so CPAC, Karen.
I can tell you that CPAC did have a virtual speaker last week with a combination with a couple of other local CPACs. It was with Jonathan Mooney, and it was called Those Kids Learning Outside the Lines, so hopefully that was well attended. I wanted to go, but I was not able to attend. And then I'm hoping to see them in their December meeting. So,
They have a business meeting in December.
I believe it's the first week of the month.
Excellent.
First Monday of the month.
Great. That's excellent. Yeah, all right.
Can I just say I attended the Jonathan Mooney webcast. It was really good.
Yeah, I thought it was.
And I think that it would be really good for teachers too, if you're ever looking for speakers for teachers, because he gives really good experiences that he's had with teachers, and then some that were pretty difficult and how they impacted his life. So I think it's just something to think about for the future. But it was great for parents as well.
Awesome, thanks, Brian. So for the RAAAC, I reported to you at the last meeting that DESE had not gotten back to me with their revisions on the most recent draft. I contacted them again a couple of days ago, and I think that one of the women who I communicate with had to be out for a little bit, so that's delayed her response. She's hoping to get her next round of revisions to me in the next couple of days, so hopefully that will come back to you. As long as they are not too significant, then we could perhaps bring the entire new regional agreement to the school committee before the end of the school year, or excuse me, the end of the calendar year. All right. Items for next agenda. Planning calendar that you guys can always access on the website. So for our next meeting, which is on November 30th, it is remote. So there's what we're going to be working on next time. We do hope to hold an executive session remotely for that meeting too. for the purpose of negotiation conversation.
What day is that? November 30th?
Yeah.
Okay.
And you got my email today about the 28th.
Yeah.
Meeting early.
Yes.
Okay, we're Washington DC tonight.
Yeah, you can take off.
Yeah, thank you. So the public gifts policy will be ready for the next time. I'm going to take off the DC vote because we already did that. I beat you. Anything else you guys want to add? Do you want a longer meeting? Maureen, you too. Go ahead.
The annual audit presentation, do I have to do anything for that? Or is that?
The annual audit presentation.
If it's okay if I interject, I had a conversation with our auditors from Melanson this morning.
Okay.
So when we meet for budget warrant subcommittee on Monday, I can fill you in and we can go from there as far as planning audit presentation.
Okay.
Okay.
Sounds
Madam Chair, if I may.
Please.
I was doing some work with Ms. Becky this week. I think it would be prudent to come give a health update of the schools along with an attendance presentation so the committee can see how we're tracking this year.
Excellent.
So I think that would be
On the
a good
30th.
item to have on the 30th.
Okay, so health and wellness presentation,
Yep.
or sickness as the case may be.
Our Schoolzilla's tools are working brilliantly to monitor such things.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. All right, everybody. I'm happy to entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Thanks, Amy. All in favor? Very good, everybody. Good night. Thank you.